guys, so this video is for the lecture for Thursday, April the 2nd. So we're going to go ahead and begin. Your mugshot is written on the board for you, so I'm just going to scoot over and pause the video if you need to and make those corrections. Okay, so since you did that, I'm going to go over with my red marker and make the corrections for you. So the first correction is that I need to make is it needs to be a capital U instead of a lowercase because it's the beginning of a sentence. There should be no comma here. Breathe, the walking. There needs to be a comma after breathe. Catfish moves overland from one, it needs to add an S to moves, and then overland from one body of water to another. And then end the sentence with a period. So those are the corrections for this. Go ahead and write any that you missed down. I'll give you a minute to look over that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on. So for today's class, you are going to need to get out your spelling list 30. You're also going to need to get out your grammar worksheet lesson 91. Today we're going to be working on page 298 on that grammar worksheet. Last class we worked on the front of the grammar worksheet for lesson 91, but today we're going to be working on the back. And you're also going to need to get out your literature assignment. That is titled The Legend of William Tell, which is on page 122 and 124. And yep, that's all that you need for today. So make sure you go get that out from your folders because you're going to need that for the rest of the video. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about suffixes and silent E. So I wrote everything on the board for you guys. So it says, for most words with silent E, keep the E when adding a suffix. Okay, again, it says for most words. It doesn't say for all, so I'm going to emphasize on most. For most words with silent E, keep the E when adding a suffix. Okay, so I'm going to pause this right there, and then I'm going to have us go and look at this example down here. The word is safe, okay? So safe ends with the silent E. And up here, it's telling us for most words with silent E, keep the E when adding a suffix. So in this case, safe ends with the silent E, right? So in this case, we would just keep our silent E and just add our suffix. So the word would become safely, S-A-F-E-L-Y. So we're keeping our silent E in this case, okay? So let's move up to sentence number 2. It says, when you add the suffix ly to a word that ends in L plus silent E, drop the LE. Okay, I'm going to pause this again right there. So I want us to come down to the word drizzle. This is our second example. So up here, it's telling us whenever we have a word that ends with L followed by a silent E, we would drop the L and the E and then add our suffix to the word. So we have drizzle. So we're dropping the L and E because whenever an L is followed by a silent E, then you would drop the LE and then you would just add your suffix. So then the word becomes drizzly, D-R-I-Z-Z-L-Y. So drizzly becomes our word. We're just adding we're dropping the LE and then we're adding the suffix. So it becomes drizzly. Okay, now moving on to the last sentence. It says also drop the silent E when you add a suffix beginning with a vowel or a Y. Okay, so let's go down to our third example, bubble. So in this case, we have a suffix beginning with a vowel, right? Because A, E, I, O, U, those are our vowels, and sometimes Y. And so in this case, our suffix begins with the vowel I, right? So since our suffix begins with the vowel, then we would drop the E. We would drop the silent E, and then we would just add our suffix. So it would be bubbling. So B-U-B-B-L-I-N-G, because we had to drop that silent E since our suffix began with a vowel. Moving on. Now we're going to talk about suffixes and final Y. So it says, for words ending with a vowel plus Y, keep the Y when adding a suffix. Okay, so remember, vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. So in this case, let's go down and let's look at our first example, joyful. It says, so again, it says, for words ending with a vowel plus a Y, keep the Y when adding a suffix. So if we look at the word joy, joy ends with a vowel, because O is a vowel, and it ends with a vowel followed by a Y. So in this case, we're going to keep our Y when we add the suffix. So it's going to be joyful, Joyful, because remember, we're keeping that Y since we have a vowel followed by the Y. We would keep it. Okay, so moving on to the next sentence. It says, for words ending with a consonant plus Y, we would change the Y to an I. Okay, so let's pause there and let's go down and let's look at our second example. So our second example, the word is silly. So again, it says, for words ending with a consonant plus a Y, we would change the Y to an I. So in this case, remember, consonants are everything except vowels. So our vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, and then everything else in the alphabet is a consonant. So in this case, we have silly. It ends with a consonant. L is a consonant, and it's followed by a Y. So in this case, we would have to change the Y to an I. So it would become silliness, S-I-L-I, because remember we had to change that Y to an I, and it became silliness, S-I-L-L-I-N-E-S-S. Okay, so now moving on to the last sentence. It says, the exception is when, so we have an exception. The exception is when the suffix begins with an I. Okay, so to avoid having two I's together, we would keep the Y. Okay, so let's look at our last example, which is crying. So remember, it says we have an exception, and that's when the suffix begins with an I. So if we look at this example, cry, right? So our suffix in this example is ing. So whenever we have a suffix beginning with an ing, that's beginning with an I, then we would have to avoid having two I's together. So we would have to keep the Y. So in this case, we're keeping the Y because our suffix begins with an I. So to avoid having two I's together, we're going to have to keep the Y in crying and then just add the suffix ing to the word. So your word would be crying, C-R-Y-I-N-G. So we're keeping the Y because our suffix we're keeping the Y because our suffix begins with an I. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to talk about is adding prefixes. When you add a prefix to a word, do not change the spelling of the word. So that's pretty simple. So I wrote some examples right here on the board for you. So the first example says, so remember, whenever we're adding a prefix, we're not changing any spelling of the word. We're just going to add the prefix. So the first example is illegal. Okay, so our prefix is IL, and then our word is legal. So all we're going to do is put that word together. We're just going to combine it. So it's going to be ILLEGAL, and that is illegal. Our second example is recook. Okay, so right here, our prefix is RE, and our word is cook. So we're just adding that prefix to the word, and we're going to combine it, and it's going to be one word, recook, R-E-C-O-O-K. Our last example is untie. So our prefix in this is UN, and our word is tie. So again, all we're doing is combining the prefix with our word and just writing it together. So our word is going to come out to untie. Okay, so now that we've gone over those rules, let's go ahead and look at page 298, and we're going to do some of exercise 1 together. So exercise 1 says, use the spelling rules in this lesson to spell the words indicated. So the first example is already done for you, and that is copy, and our suffix is ing. So normally, for words ending with a consonant plus Y, we would normally change the Y to an I. However, this is an exception. And this is an exception because we have a suffix that begins with an I. So whenever we have a suffix that begins with an I, to avoid having two I's together, we would keep the Y. So that's why we would keep the Y in copying and just add the suffix ing. So it would be copying. So let's go down and look at number 1. Our word is biting. So bite is our word and ing is our suffix. So for this one, well, normally for most words bite ends with a silent E. So normally when we have words that end with a silent E, normally we would keep the E when we add a suffix. However, in this case, we are going to drop the silent E because we have a suffix that begins with a vowel. So our suffix begins with I, so since that is the case, then we're going to drop the silent E and just add the suffix. So it would be biting, B-I-T-I-N-G. So now let's go look at number 2, migrate. And then I-O-N is our suffix. So this is the same exact case. Migrate ends with an E. So normally, yes, we would keep our silent E. However, we have a suffix that begins with an I. That begins with a vowel. That is an I. So in this case, we would have to drop our silent E and just add I-O-N, our suffix, to the word. So it would become migration, M-I-G-R-A-T-I-O-N. Now let's look at number 3 together. Number 3 is sleepy, and then ly is our suffix. So for this case, we have a consonant plus a y. So sleepy ends with a consonant plus a y. So since that's the case, we would change the y to an I in sleepily. So it would become sleepily, S-L-E-E-P-I-L-Y. So we had to change that y to an I because sleepy ends with a consonant plus a y. So therefore, that's why we had to change y to an I. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys do the rest of exercise 1 on your own. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to either email me or you can message me on GroupMe. Don't hesitate, I'm here to help you. Alright, so I went ahead and wrote your classwork on the board for you. So for today's classwork, you need to complete the grammar worksheet 91 that we just went over on page 298. Complete exercise 1. You also need to do your literature assignment, The Legend of William Tell, which is on page 122 and 124. You're going to need to complete the Think It Through on that assignment. And lastly, you are also going to have to write a 1 to 2 page paper. And you're just going to have to write a story on, it could be any topic that you want, but it just needs to include 10 vocabulary words from any spelling test. So again, write a 1 to 2 page paper just of a story, and it has to include 10 vocabulary words from any spelling list. All right, guys, well, I will see y'all next time.